I did want to touch again on an article that Visit put up on April 8th about the grassroots organizations. And there's a mass of them that are screaming about the Senate Bill 224. And what
Dana
Senate
says now up to 36
organizations. And these are folks from all different, some of them are parents groups, some of them are Second Amendment groups, and then about freedoms. They're across the board that these people, I've never seen so many grassroots groups come together to fight a piece of legislation, which should be a massive red flag to all of us. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about what is in 224. And I know, Jenni, you've done a lot of work on this, and you've looked into how much data is being collected about our children already, our children and families. But what 224 does, it actually creates a whole new layer of government. They want to give millions of tax dollars to create a data system to collect existing and more data from families. And some of it is daunting. The bill as written wants to collect religious affiliations of students and their parents or guardians. It wants to collect medical information from students and their parents or guardians. Now you're going to hear legislators say, no, this is just technology that will help us gather the information that's being collected. It's not true. It may do that, but they're also pushing to collect additional data. So there's a couple of problems with this bill. One is personal freedoms, liberty, and privacy that public education doesn't seem to have any line about, or our legislature. And the other one is absolute grift. So this would bring in a whole new committee of 9 who's going to oversee all of this data within the legislature. So you got your new governmental body. They always create something. The legislation says it doesn't have to end at 9. We can add more people to this if we wanted. The legislation makes it look as though those positions are paid. It also calls for a vendor or vendors to put together this system and then ongoing be paid to monitor and to maintain this system. Now, recently, some grassroots folks, and I know one of them's on here, met with Representative Caldwell and Seafried, who put this bill up. And they were told that, and you can verify this, sources out there, they were told that the vendor that would be associated to this with this legislation has already been identified. That flies in the face of our state law about contracting, sole sourcing things. You cannot do that under Oklahoma public funding. They already have someone, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And this is, we go through all of the votes, we go through the people, and we can do that, right? But if you go back to an interview that I did with Kendra Wesson, and she was the state Board of Education member who was recently removed from Governor Stitt, along with 2 others, in this political battle that we see going on between Walters and Stitt, and this war against education reform. Well, within that interview, she revealed, one of the things she revealed about her time on the State Board of Education is that in her first meeting, she recalled requesting that 2 different line items, each for $1.4 million, be removed from the education budget that was proposed. One was to imagine math and one was to imagine reading. So those all fall under the company Imagine Learning. Now, that line item, putting something as a line item curriculum in the state budget for education means it skips the curriculum review, it goes straight through, and we pay for it. And she said, why is that in there? We're local control state. At the state level, we don't buy curriculums. That's something people decide about in their local school board. Well, it turns out that Imagine Learning has 4 lobbyists that are constantly lobbying our state legislature. Also within the records, they pay for all kinds of lunches and banquets and perks for these legislators, which somehow, through former Representative Mark McBride, got them a line item on the state budget for something we're not even supposed to be purchasing as a state. So when you look at this 224, and let's go back and look at who's behind it. So this is Representative Caldwell. He's one of the
Okay,
authors.
hold on just a second, Mary. Mary, your internet is unstable, and it's kind of been unstable since the beginning, but it's getting a little bit worse. Is there anything?
Do you want me to log out and log back in?
No. Is there? Can you see anything on your computer that says, could you change to another network or something, maybe?
Let me give it a whirl. I'll give it a whirl for you.
Oh, wait, whatever you're doing right now seems to be better.
Okay. I'll leave it there and you tell me if you need something different.
Okay. Yeah. For some reason it seems to be different. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So that might have helped. So Representative Caldwell, we've talked about him before. He has 16 new pieces of legislation up in this session, one of them being the Protect Our Kids Act, which is HB 1075, which was the exact opposite. It made it more difficult to remove predator educators from the classroom. He's on a lot of the education committees. And Seafried is sort of surprising to be on this piece of legislation. So she's a freshman senator, and she's a Republican, about fighting for liberty in her 2022 campaign. But it's hard to say why she would get behind this piece of legislation that expands government and collects additional data. Any thoughts there?
Well, yeah, that's why you have a nearly termed out senator who's been on there almost 12 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pulling in a freshman because it's easy to tell the freshman what to do, right? So
correct. Sometimes a pat on the back to a freshman.
Oh, and this is a good one. They publish Edgenuity, one of the least effective virtual curriculums available. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I want to reiterate. Imagine Learning was from previously. They had a contract. We do not know who this vendor is that they've pre-identified prior to the legislation, but I can tell you that we will certainly be throwing open records requests to get communication between these legislators and this vendor should this 224 pass. It's one floor vote away from passing. And when they identify the vendor, we will be looking for open records requests to find out what the communications were before that are against the law. The legislature cannot just identify a vendor and enter into a contract outside of the process. If you look at the audit that Cindy Bird did related to the OMES, they're supposed to be the ones who keep money and contracts clean in state government. This was a problem there. They did things that were against the law, conflicts of interest, and subverting the bidding process. So that is a huge concern for me. This bill will cost millions every year. It will create another level of government, and they will be collecting additional data. Okay, I see some comments out here, particularly from Roberta.
So even with the grassroots fighters standing up, the amount of legislators that won't listen is alarming. I think that's a really good one. With the option to add more members. What reason would they have to know what your beliefs are? Very suspicious. Well, and here's the other thing, Gracie. There is a protection of pupil rights amendments, the PPRA, which prevents the state from collecting any personal information from a student about your religion, your politics. But here's the problem. That's only in federal programming. So if you have money or an objective that's coming from the state, they get to circumvent the PPRA and do whatever they want. Now, my argument would be if we're getting federal funding for this, which it looks like we are, then the PPRA means they can't do this. But again, I think we've already shown one time in this particular podcast that no one, even judges, follow the law. The law is just simply something that legislators do to vindicate your vote for them so that they can say they've done something. Laws mean nothing. They're not written to protect the citizenry. They're not meant to do anything like that. They're meant, again, as a way to assure the people who have voted for them that they're actually doing something. It may sound cynical, but I've found just another thing that as soon as I get enough time on, I'm going to write about, which is the sunset laws in Oklahoma and how our legislature is not following those and continuing on with these boards, commissions, and whatever they are that taxpayers pay for, and they're not following the law to reinstate those. So it just goes over and over and over again. It doesn't ever stop. A taxpayer can't file charges because you can't trust the attorneys or judges. OMG, they publish Ingenuity, one of the least effective curriculums, crooks in training. Sherry says, I have thoughts why it's her and not Pew. This bill also requires the board apply for federal grants they've already identified for. Well, if they're going to apply for federal grants, then the PPRA absolutely should be in place. And you can't ask a kid any information about their religion or their politics or anything like that. Imagine Learning received money from the Gates Foundation. That's not at all a big shock. We're dismantling the USDOE. So where are these grants coming from? I have a thought on that. Probably Amplify. That's what Texas is moving to. And they explicitly teach religious doctrine within lessons like the pillars of Islam. They've been doing that for years. Also yesterday with a conversation with Caldwell, he stated numerous times that the groups on this letter have no idea what they are talking about. Okay, let me tell you, Representative Caldwell, that Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment actually put together an interim study for the state legislature in 2013 because we had dug so deeply into this data that we knew essentially everything about it. So come at me with that. Come at me with that. I mean, I have so much information. And if you were a good representative of the people, you would want to know what the information is that we've collected. That's what you would want to know. You wouldn't want to say we're stupid and don't know what we're talking about. But I mean, give me a buzz. You know, we'll meet in a parking lot, whatever you think is best. How ridiculous. How ridiculous, how condescending, how nonsensical. Let me say this. I'm not stupid, and I know what data does, Representative Caldwell. Data is actually a commodity. You can trade it. You can make money off it. You can get kickbacks on it. Data is a commodity. It's so easy to sell our children for a couple of shekels because, well, shoot, we can get the money. We've got a federal grant. We've got this. We've got that. Makes me so angry if any of our legislators, and some of them, many of them there are a number of them who have stood up and said no. And those are the ones that we really need to be talking about here, because those are the ones that actually know what liberty is. But any representative or senator worth their salt will be saying, oh my gosh, hold on. We need to protect students here. We need to do that. So let me look into what you're looking at. That incenses me to the core. See, because legislators work for us. They work for us. And I'm not going to play the game of, voting. I'm not going to do that. Legislators are put in place to protect the liberty of their constituents. That is their only job. That is the only thing we vote on. It has incensed me, and I can't even believe that. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Now, granted, I haven't studied this in quite some time, but I can tell. Do you know what a SIF is? What is SIF? Do you know if we have it? Do you know if they're updating it? I'm just curious.
Well, Jenny, if I can add an adjective in there to your commodity example, I will say that without a shadow of a doubt, data is leveraged. It's a leveraged commodity. There's no more powerful thing than data. Whoever has the most data is going to win. They are going to have every single advantage, no matter what the application is. It's literally leveraged. It's a leveraged commodity. That's how I would describe all this data collection.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, when you look at this from the bill about what they proposed to collect, you need to also think about where they're then going to share this. They're going to share that data, and they say it in the bill, across state and federal government agencies, with partners, vendors, researchers. The government having your data is pretty much the least secure place it can possibly be. And you can imagine where all of those kind of groups, you go into partners and researchers, now you're into the web of NGOs that the good people of this country have been fighting. How could they misuse that information against families? It creates a forever managed vendor here. It's an entirely new expandable board that will be grifting off of this. So though we don't know who the vendor is, I think we really need to think about where that data is going. And if there's one bill we stand up against in this, it's this bill. And it's flying through. It is not getting, you look at these committee votes of 7-3, it's not really getting any resistance, despite this unprecedented number of grassroots groups screaming from the mountaintops about this bill. It passed the Senate 33-13. So you can see here, when you see the nays, that's all we've got fighting for personal liberties in our state Senate in Oklahoma. It's daunting. So this bill hopefully will not pass, but it's a window into what's happening in our legislature, and these subversive relationships with lobbyists, vendors, and contractors. And I think we need to keep these receipts, because I think when things roll around in 2026, we need to know who needs to be gone. So,
well,
and I
want to add this really fast. So this is
yes.
I created this to talk about where all the data actually goes. And so, because they wanted a seamless database, and Janice and I were Danforth and I were talking about this morning. Don't forget, Trump wants to get rid of the USDOE, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But mm-hmm. What's the thing that's most important with our legislators? Workforce. That's all we ever hear. Don't tell me this is going to go away. This is going to go to the Department of Labor. This is where all of this data is going to start running through the Department of Labor, based on the workforce issue, so that we can track everything. This is literally how this data works. And here's another thing that people need to understand. So years and years ago, when I started researching this, my husband has been a computer programmer for a long, long time. And I said, okay, Dave, they're telling me that this is all de-identified data. It's all going to be aggregated, and none of this can come back to the point where your personal identification can be pulled out, or your PI, which is what they call a personal identification. And he said that's absolutely not correct, because when you enter data into cells in whatever program it is, that data becomes inextricably located to the original data point, So you can pull that data off, you can pull it into another cell, but if anybody ever wanted to go backwards, and I guess any decent programmer worth their salt could do it, you can re-engineer exactly where the John Doe who had that personal data point. So when they say this is all de-identified data, it's all aggregated, there's no way that you can get to you can get back to the PI. There's no possible way that that's true. It isn't true. It's completely false. Any decent computer programmer would tell you that that's not true. So for them to say that this is the way it works, basically, is another form of propaganda. Well, if I just tell you that this is the way it is, then this is the way it is. Well, I want you to look at this particular schematic.
Yes.
So the teacher enters data into these vendors, which then go to the local school, but then also you've got for-profit education vendors that enter information into this thing. And it all comes from the student, goes to the district, goes to the State Department of Education. We know it does, because the WAVE, which is the database that we have, is housed at the OSDE. We know that that's where it is. You can go look it up. I just wrote an article detailing all of that. We do know that the School Interoperative Framework, or the SIF, which was created by Microsoft and a whole other people when Obama came in, because see, this all goes back to Obama. This all goes back to the Common Core ease time, when Obama was trying to change the nature of everything, Marxize everything from education to healthcare. This is where this all came from. Look at where this information goes. And it's even worse when you look at the next one. So here's where Consolidated State Performance Report, Individuals with Disabilities Act, the Electronic Application System of Indian Education, the Common Core of Data, EdFacts, Eden, Civil Rights Data Collection, comes from the census, college application information, integrated. I have all of the data for this in a folder that I just found yesterday. And I almost sent the whole folder to Janice, because I can show you back to where all of this stuff comes from. So tell me then that our kids' data isn't being taken. And what's crazy is you just said that we don't have according to this group, and I had it up on the screen and then I took it down. According to this group, Oklahoma and 5 other states do not have a state longitudinal database. I want to know how that happened, because we took $3 million minimum and created a P20 council and did all of this stuff. Where did all that money go then? Where did all that money go from 2010, 12, and 13? Where did all that money go then if we don't have an SLDS already? We know we have the WAVE. We know everything that's published in the WAVE. Literally, according to that bill, the bill that we helped write, SB224, that was the one that said you had to publish all of the information in the WAVE. So we know the stuff that they collect, and they've even said some of what they're collecting, because I put that in the last article I wrote on it. This is just maddening. It's absolutely maddening. I don't see how this is just based on money, and somebody's not getting some money for this somewhere, which is why it's getting pushed. Sorry, I had to just say that.
Go back on that screen. I want to show something and give an example, Jenni.
Which one?
Your workflow.
The first one or the second one?
The second one, the one you just had up. Okay, so go back. So this is all what you're allowed to see also. So you tracked all this because you connected all the dots, but let's go back to the teacher, she's entering the data, and then you have the actual vendors. Well, those vendors are private. They have proprietary software, and what you're tracking is what they're allowing you to see on the output side back to the state or the school district or whoever it may be. Think about this, just like with my smart meter. When I got my smart meter removed from the house, the guy at Edmond Electric, the head guy, literally told me, he's in my backyard, and I asked him, I said, I want to know how many data fields are contained in this meter. It was over 200, but he said, but we don't access any of those. We only access about 4 or 5. That's it. That's all we have access to. We're not going to use any of that other stuff. Well, it's that other company that makes that meter, global international company that makes that meter. They have all the rest of my data, or whoever's data that's on. Just like this deal, you got the teacher putting in all that data. All those private proprietary vendors have all that data. God knows where and who it's going to. That's the real other side of this deal.
That is. And
But
when
even
these,
if we know that this is going, and we know for a fact that this data can go to all of these places. And it's kind of like I was saying before, Department of Corrections people, National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. Look at where this Department of Health and Human Services. It's just, I'm sorry. This is your show, Mary. I apologize.
No, this is exactly the conversation we need to have, because Senate Bill 224 addresses none of those things. So Caldwell said to these grassroots folks that met with him, because they're commenting that all of this data is already being collected, right? All of it. This is just a brand new shiny system that's going to bring it all together under the fallacy is that we have more data kids are going to learn. Well, on the financial side of this, someone brought up a really great point. They asked him, so are we going to cancel paying all these vendors for all these other systems that are currently collecting what you say is data that's already being collected, because now we have this shiny new system with a new vendor? His answer was no. They will all keep going collecting it. So all those folks have all of that access that Michael just said about your data that's being spread around the universe to all these entities, and you'll be paying for the new shiny system and the new board that's going to be overseeing the shiny system. On the freedoms and liberties side of this, I would say to Caldwell, who says we're already collecting this, then your bill that you should be representing for the people of your district would be one to stop collecting all of that data, because they're getting far more data about these kids and they just continue to increase it. And again, we have an inverse relationship like administrator salaries and kids' outcome. The more data they collect, it has not turned into positive outcomes. We went through this with the whole Hoffmeister administration. They pulled down all the district and school records and school report card and all of that because they had to rework and come up with this shiny new system. Scores plummeted. This is an absolute fallacy, and I'm with you. One of the other things that this letter, and I have to talk about this letter that was written by Moms for Liberty, and then signed on. You can download this letter here in the article. Go to V1SUT.com. And this letter is so well written. It talks about this bill being nothing more than a Trojan horse promising efficiency while delivering a multi-million-dollar surveillance nightmare for Oklahomans. And then it goes on to talk about the voices of the people are being silenced with chatter behind the scenes about the support of this bill from the Oklahoma State Chamber and OEQA. So what none of the representatives involved that are, including a Democrat, will respond to is who requested this? Who requested this shiny new data system? And what these grassroots folks are finding out, the Oklahoma State Chamber and the OEQA. And I don't know if people sort of understand what the OEQA is, but it's another government agency that was created just like this through legislation because we needed more people to oversee education quality and accountability. And if you look through who's on the commission right now, it is absolutely laughable if you're talking about a representative democracy. So on this, just to give you a couple of examples, we've got superintendents on this. We've got a higher education member who, this is someone who's an assistant professor in educational leadership. We have
educational leadership. What does that have to do with students? What does that have to do with student learning?
I'm not sure, but she's on this commission that's behind pushing this along with the Oklahoma Chamber. We have teachers, all education insiders. And so here we're supposed to have a business and industry member on this commission, correct? He's in ed tech. He's an ed tech person. He has a company that provides education technology, right? Then we get down here and we've got someone, our parent member, right? You'd think this would be a parent to give. No, this is somebody from Epic Charter Schools is our parent member on this commission. So parents are being, and taxpayers are being boxed out of the process. If you think this 9-member commission over this shiny new Senate Bill 224 data system is going to be any different, it's not.
I literally can't take it. And guess what? It's probably gonna have to get a whole lot worse and it gets better before all the plebs just wake up and say that's enough.
Correct. So I think the tip is for folks, this needs to be a statewide grassroots effort. This legislative session has been so deluged with junk.
It's horrible.
That you cannot follow it, and it seems that that's by design. This is a bill that's got to be stopped.
Well, but it's in committee, I think, today at 1. So good luck for that now. I mean, it's clear that this isn't anything. Okay, hold on. Let me go through some comments.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Caldwell, but I graduated high school before we were graduating students with a 3rd grade reading level. Love you, Roberta. Steph says the law is what honest people have to follow or they pay the price. The elites are excluded from the rules, and that's 160%. The question should be, if we're already collecting this data, will we remove those vendors that are already collecting this data? Will it then push the money over to the new collection system? That's a good question. The answer is no. We will continue to pay for independent data collection as well as the new collection system, of course. Again, look at the legislation some of these clowns push through, yet they keep getting voted in. Yeah. Data is used to market our kids. What could go wrong? Well, and profit. Because don't forget, Sherry was on here one time. Sherry, I don't know if you're still on. And she said it was like the most horrifying and then the most enlightening thing at the same time, which is basically right now we have education to make money off of kids through data collection. That's why we have education. It's not about teaching them anything or making anything better. It's about how much money we can make off them. This bill only adds to the backs of taxpayers in the state for another overreach of government spending. Breach it, Jenny. No, Jenny, legislators do not work for us and they do not protect our rights. They steal, kill, and destroy. Well, Michael is spot on. Data is control. What control are they wanting to push? Also, this bill states in plain 3rd grade text that this information will be shared with and also others. Homeschoolers should be concerned that this will be pushed on us in the future. And Robert, that's interesting because part of the reason why I started in on Common Core was for the public school, but it was also because I knew that once we got Common Core in, it was going to start screwing up all of the textbooks that we actually drew on as home educators, and it was going to make things worse, which is why I jumped over to data collection, because I was like, as soon as they figure out, Robert, you got to go to my old blog and type in homeschoolers and you'll find some stuff. Like one time we were at a P20 council meeting, and the P20 council was the thing that was to establish the state longitudinal database in Oklahoma. And we were at a P20 meeting, and one of the guys who was sitting there literally lamented in front of all of us. Ask Julia. Julia will tell you it was true. She was sitting there at that meeting, actually lamented that they couldn't get data on homeschoolers. Lamented at the meeting to set up the state longitudinal database system. I'm so glad you're fighting this. What Michael just said is spot on. Those with the data will be able to identify patterns and manipulate and exploit the results to serve their interest, all while mouthpieces gaslight the population. And you know what? That's part of the reason I argued against the state grade card all those years ago when they first brought that on. Why did they bring that on? To get federal funds, because the ESEA said that they had to have a grade card in order to get their federal funds. People, this is not about you. It's never been about you. It's never been about your children. It's always been about money. If you don't understand that, go over to the wall and bang your head upon it 50 or 60 times until it gets in there good. Becky, yes. It's just like the CCP. Yes. Factual. The preamble to this bill states that the goal is to make sure that we have a good investment. Who decides what a good investment is? Actually, I'm going to back up, Roberta. What investment are you talking about? What is the investment? Where is it? Where is the investment? The state can't invest anything. Oh, that makes sense. John Boy, who's going to be able to purchase or obtain this data? very, very interesting question, isn't it? It won't be us. Do you know if you go to the state website, and this is in my last article, if you go to the state website, I have everything in there where you can go track it down. If you go to the state longitudinal database system website and you say, hey, can I get in there and look at the data? They say, no, sorry. You know what? That's against the law, but it doesn't matter because why do we have laws? I don't know. Good question.
Well, and to his point, I encourage you, there are links in the article to go read the bill. It gives very wide latitude for them to, quote, share this data with a range of different entities. So that's one of the scariest parts of this proposition.
But that's what they said in the original bill. That was why we got so upset about the original state longitudinal database that was proposed in 2010 and went into legislation in 2010 in that same bill where they instituted Common Core. That's where that was. So, I mean, this has been around, and that's the other thing that just frustrates me. This has been around since 2010 and Obama, and Janet Barisi, who was our first Republican state superintendent in a long, long time, doubled down and took on every single one of Obama's 4 pillars for changing Oklahoma education. If you don't believe it, go to our old blog spot. All you have to do is type in Reclaim Oklahoma Public Education blog spot, pops right up. Put that, I have copiously documented all that happened during that period of time. All this stuff has been in place. All of it has been in place since 2010. We got federal funds for it. It's Marxist. Everything belongs to the government. Very true. Put aluminum foil on your smart meter, John says. It'll upset the electric company. Steph wants to know how she gets the meter removed. I think it's called a Sawzall, but then the only problem is you better have backup for that. Y'all need to do a show getting rid of smart meters, and we can do that. I mean, me and Michael can surely do that. Representative democracy.
Real quick, Steph. First, read all the little fine print on your electric bill, because a lot of times down there, like on mine, it specifically said how to do it. And actually, in Edmond, they might have changed this, but when I did it, it literally says that no matter what the meter is, that I'm responsible for getting the reading to them for a certain date. And I used that against them also. I said, you don't need all this two-way stuff. I'll just put an old school meter on mine, and I'll call in, on whatever day you want me to call in, and I'll tell you what the numbers are.
Most school board members have an education background. That's correct. Unfortunately, there are many people who do not believe that this will be used for nefarious purposes. And you know what, Sherry, that's what originally happened to us in the first place, which is why we begged and got that interim study in 2013 finally, because people were like, it's just data. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's kind of like what they say about Real ID. We're going to have a show on that coming up because everybody has to say no to that. We have to start having the personal responsibility to keep our own data safe. And when the government tells us to do something, we use the middle finger and tell them, come get it. I mean, I'm done with all of this nasty garbage that's going on. It's for the safety of the children who could be against the children. Yes, true. $4 billion we spend on the education industry. I'm getting so angry, except they can't give a good argument as to how it's safe for the children. But they don't care, Gracie. They just simply don't care. You can ask them question after question, and it just doesn't matter that they don't know the answer because it's all for the kids. And why are you asking? Why would you even, ask that question? And it's about, how they manipulate and shame anybody who questions them. Also, if you look at a lot of education bills, there's language in there calling for an SLDS. And again, I don't know how that can be. Where did all this money go to develop the SLDS and have those P20 meetings and everything else? back in the day between 2010 and 2014 if we don't already have an SLDS? It doesn't make any sense to me. Something wacky's going on. And yes, Julia and I in cars for years, traveling all over the state, trying to warn people about this. Not directly, but calling for the collection of data. With federal, county, and money, we're actually spending around $7 billion. That's probably true. Tell me again how money is going to fix the problem. Well, I mean, obviously, it fixes the problem with education because, as Mary just told us today, Dr. Nick gets over almost $500,000 to not educate children. So I guess that's how we fix the problem. I'm not sure,
Mary,
but
Mary
I want to throw.
Well, I just wanted to ask Mary real quick. Didn't you say in a podcast or two ago that Caldwell was on that Southern Education Board, also resource board? Also, I wonder if that has any tie in here with why he's the one, running this.
That's a really good point. So the Board of Control for Southern Regional Education, which they call the SREB, there's a number of people from Oklahoma that are appointed to the association, but the two that were appointed to their Legislative Advisory Council, which is where a whole bunch of states, think of it as we can get rid of US Ed, but there are all these NGOs that are national out there that gather our state representatives and affect our education policy. So this Legislative Advisory Council has Senator Pugh and Representative Caldwell going to all of those meetings representing Oklahoma, where they work out all these policy solutions for the people in all of these states, instead of the process happening as it should, where the people have a say. So that doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised if both the idea for this and the vendor connections that eventually unfold here come from connections to that organization or some others, some similar that our legislators are participating in. And that's been going on for 50 years that they've been going to these legislative. You start to think about, why is Oklahoma education so out of step with the constituency? And it's those kind of organizations and influences from above and outside of Oklahoma that are making the difference. I wouldn't be surprised if other states aren't fighting this nearly identical legislation.
Actually, they are, because some lady from Kansas that I've known, Lisa Husers from Kansas, who didn't want to call her some lady. Sorry, Lisa. From Kansas, we fought Common Core together, and I went up to speak in Kansas numerous times. Emailed me the other day and said, I really need to make you a time to come speak to our Kansas State School Board, because they're trying to do the state longitudinal database thing again. And apparently they're one of the several that don't have it. So this is clearly a federal push of some kind to get this done. And I believe without question that it's something in the Trump admin. And I'm sorry, I like Trump, but I don't like some of the stuff he does. And it's something inside the Trump administration where they're saying, if we're going to shut down the US DOE, we need to make sure that data is still accessible. And I guarantee you they're going to move it over to the Department of Labor. Watch me. I want to, in closing out, because I know it's getting late in the day and we've got to get out of here. But I did want to show something. Can I take yours down just for a second, Mary?
Absolutely. Yep. Take it down permanently.
Okay. So here's our website. If you want to go find all of the basic data that we collected beginning in 2010 with the beginning of the state longitudinal database system, go to our Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment blog spot, and you can find that. And I'm going to scroll down here because this is an article that I wrote in 2013. We had representative then at the time, Jason Nelson, we thought was going to help us write a bill to block the state longitudinal database. And what ended up happening in the end is that we got screwed over because Jason Nelson went and had a meeting with Mark Cramen, who was the architect of the state longitudinal database, and they decided instead of stopping it, they would just make a bill that opened up all of the information to parents. And it's funny because I've seen this particular bill used as a reason to forward Caldwell's bill. And the problem is it doesn't protect anybody and it doesn't really open anything. And if you want to look at some of the fields that we know are in the state longitudinal database, it's really important to go back to these things because we've taken screenshots from everything and shows it's like blood type and what are some of the ones that I taught? How much your parents make, what's your blood type? I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, so in the end, then Senator David Brumbaugh, who has passed away, he and Jason Nelson worked on this bill. And at the end, it just basically ended up screwing over parents. It didn't help us at all. So what it says in the bill is, unless included in a student's educational record, student data shall not include, and it gives these 5 things. Student basic biometric information is one thing. And I'm looking down here because I want to get to the bottom. And it talks about why the bill is bad and all of that if you want to go look at it. But here's the bottom that you really need to know. So here is the SEDS data model. This is the data model that actually, and if you click on it, you can go to it, will actually show you what this data model looks like. And I hope it still goes there. Does it still go there? Oh, it sure does. Yes, it does. This is it. This is the Common Education Data Standards model, and you can actually go and look to see what all is data that they're actually collecting. So it's super interesting. This is the original grant that we got in. So this grant was produced under Janet Barisi in, I don't see the date on it, by John Cramen, the executive director of student information, and it will tell you all about this grant. So we got this grant, and where did that money go? Because look what it says: building an Oklahoma P12 state longitudinal data system. So the receipts are here, peeps. It's not like it's not here. It's all here. We documented the stuff from all of this information, if you really want it, it's right there. Go find it. We had one other, this last one that I'll show you is the one that I just wrote not very long ago. And it says why these are unnecessary, because the wave captures student data on education in the workforce. And so I have all of the, look, you can go in here and go to all of these places that I've shown you. OSD is a data governance board, a data privacy plan. We have the wave code tables. We're updating our SIF network. I mean, all of this stuff, this is what we're doing right here already.
Correct. And paying
Come
for.
on. And paying for
those vendors. Yep.
And if you want to watch this, in that article is the 2013. This is what we did for the interim study in 2013. It's right there. You can go and find it. It's all there. And here's the crazy thing. All of this information is out there for anybody who wants it, including our legislators.
It is.
Just saying.
Which makes 224 even more ridiculous. So I have to hop off. I want another thing, but I will tell you, I encourage you all to share the article at V1SUT.com about these people coming up against 224 so they can read that great letter from these grassroots organizations and come up against it quickly. It's getting ready to pass.
Well, thanks. I'm sorry for kind of hijacking the end
No.
of the show there, Mary. I
No, you just showed
apologize
some
for that.
great resources, and I wasn't aware of that I can go look at every single data point they're already collecting. That's huge.
Yes, it's disgusting.
huge.
So thanks for being with us, Mary, and we'll see you again next month. for
Okay,
sure.
thanks. Bye.
All righty. Bye. Well, I feel bad because I kind of did hijack that.
We like it when you hijack.
Do what?
I said we all like it when you hijack and just start going off the rails and pulling up the old data and research and showing us all the work that's already been done and how we need to shine some light on these people.
Dana, it's on the calendar for like 1 o'clock, I think, isn't it? I mean, I think Gracie, I think, has the bottom line. The true ultimate goal is to remove parental rights. I do believe that is what the bottom goal and the bottom goal actually, hold on a second, Gracie. I think the bottom goal is to remove all of our rights. It's not just parental rights. It's to liquefy us into a system that is nothing but zeros and ones, which all of us who are Christians absolutely should not have anything to do with, because right now, and this is why we need to have a whole show on the Real ID, because what we're doing right now is just making it possible for us all to get the little 666 tattoo on our wrist with all of our data points. That's where all of this is going. And until you Christians, until you people who believe in Jesus Christ and the Bible stand up and say, I ain't doing that, they will continue to railroad us. They will continue to railroad us, thinking that they know better than we do, until we are liquefied into a system of nothing but zeros and ones. And that's exactly where we're going.